then.
Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, lead editor and writer on Maul Shadowlord, and you're listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Well, hello and welcome to Aggressive Negotiations, coming at you here. Well, we're going to have to bring the data tape to you from the surface of Mandalore because there's no signal right now. We still haven't figured that out. But I am just one of your hosts, Jedi Master Matt Rushing, and with me, as he is every single week, the Jedi Master I wish I was, John Mills.
Well, you know, Matt, I'll tell you, it's a tremendous burden being a bald Jedi Master, but I think you could handle it too. So just give me the signal and I'll fly out to you. I will shave your head so that you can enjoy the freedom and aerodynamic nature that comes with being bald. Just say the word, man. Yeah. I'm out there. I'm out there.
I appreciate that.
Here for you, brother.
Well, the thing nobody wants to see, but you can find us all over social media under the name The Jedi Masters on X Twitter. The network at Join Nerd Party is also on X Twitter. You can find us online at thenerdparty.com, Facebook at facebook.com/thenerdparty, and you can follow us over on Instagram at The Nerd Party. John, we're reaching the end here, which is so exciting of The Mandalorian Season 3. And, you know, we're going to be discussing The Return, which wraps up basically, everything that we've been working on with this show up until this point. We are going to bring all of the story points to a close in a lot of ways, especially by the time that we end this episode. And so I wanted to ask you this. Okay, we start the episode with Axe Wolves still traveling into the atmosphere, and he's able to make contact just enough.
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask you, is that just too convenient or does it work for you?
Too convenient, but I was able to move past it. It was a bit too convenient, but I was okay with it, where I said, okay. And I think probably because contextually, I made peace with it from the sense that I know this is the last episode and they're pressing the gas because they wasted some time earlier in the season. Okay. I think had this been, like we discussed last episode, a 3-episode arc for the finale, you would have had more time to do this, but they had to go in shorthand. Am I being too harsh? Do you agree?
I mean, look, I can rationalize it in the sense that, if you're just riding a jetpack, it's going to take a while to get out of the, atmosphere of a planet. You're going fast, but you're not going that fast. We're not going ship speed. So, I can rationalize it in that way, and it doesn't feel that bad, but no, I think in some ways you're right in that sense that, yes, but they also set it up in the previous episode. So it was just like, okay, I get what you're doing. It's fine. I'm going to let it go because that's what we need to do.
Do you think it's possible that this is one of those bits that works better when you have to wait a week between episodes because you're coming into it having felt the passage of time, whereas on a rewatch, you're watching it in quicker succession, and so it cuts that dramatic thing. Like they counted on the feeling of I've been waiting 7 days, feeling like it's more extended and more of a trial to get through.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's a good point. And so, this episode, picks up right where we left off in the sense of we know Gideon's desire, right? His desire is to turn himself into a force-wielding maniac that will also be able to create unstoppable troopers with Beskar armor. And so he can have the best of both worlds, which he can then utilize to reconquer the galaxy in the name of the Empire. And I got to ask you this. Do you feel like that the season then had also done a good enough job of laying that groundwork of just Gideon and his plan and what he's been after this whole time, so that we finally kind of have all the pieces coming together in that story?
I think that all of the elements are there, but they are told too far apart. The Dr. Pershing episode is so early on in the season that I think there's too much distance. I think it's easy to sit there because they make reference to Dr. Pershing in The Spies. We know that Gideon's been working with him, but it's told over too long a time span, in my opinion. I think that, again, casual watchers have to be reminded, oh, remember Pershing was working on cloning. Like, this is where I think the lore gets a little jumbled. I'm delighted by it because they mentioned Project Necromancer last time.
Yeah.
And I've got a tie-in now with the Bad Batch because Gideon is carrying forward what the Kaminoans were trying to do on Sidious's behalf with Omega. I'm like, that's phenomenal. I love it. Raises some questions about the origin of Grogu again because, okay. But it is like I'm so torn. I'm so torn because I think from an objective standpoint, no, they kind of fumble the storytelling here a little bit by having so many parts of it stretched out and interrupted by pirates and Jack Black and stuff like that. Again, it's a storytelling hump at the script level. But as a deep dive nerdy fan, I remember first time I watched it and even watching it on, in quicker succession with my kid, it's like, oh, cool. Yes, he's cloning himself. He's trying to make them Jedi. I almost wish it had been successful in the sense that like they would have come out and turned on him because they would have all been jerks like him sort of thing. But also you see that he succeeded. So do we get pointed toward the way of Snoke where it's like, oh, well, they made the breakthrough.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, look, this season and this series, as well as the Bad Batch, are doing such heavy lifting to try and make some sense of the sequel trilogy. So kudos to them for that. But I think that the beauty of that is that it actually tells a great story here, right? And it creates a terrifying villain for the Mandalorians to need to take out, because without doing that, as we mentioned last episode, this is going to be bad for the entire galaxy, not just Mandalorians. And so, and the fact that he was able to do this thing finally with the clones that were in that room, he alludes to the fact that they're exactly what he wanted. And so, okay, that's terrifying. So yeah, I do agree with you though. It comes down to the season needing to be edited in a way that all of these stories flow together more readily and more easily, so that the connections feel more organic and less kind of discombobulated from one another, like you mentioned, the long disconnection between the Pershing episode at the beginning of the season and getting to these last two episodes. Yeah, that's a long time, especially when you're doing week release television as well. So if you're not interweaving the stories enough, it can be difficult to kind of just remember, oh yeah, that's what happened. And it's like you're also connecting to other seasons of the show that took place like 3 years ago. That's the other part of this. And yes, you can watch it again on streaming. I get that. But still, there's a lot of things kind of at play here that don't do you any favors, right? When you write a season of television like the third season the way you have.
Yes, and I think another part of that is they got a little more complex in season 2, but it was still pretty focused. I have Grogu going, getting Grogu to place to do thing. First season is I have Grogu, I'm protecting Grogu. They want to take Grogu away from me. I have to protect him and save him. Very straightforward storytelling. This is lore storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And additionally, I think it's difficult. And this is what the movie Mandalorian and Grogu does better, because it has to be more focused because it's only 2 hours, is Grogu, without having to protect, chase after, save Grogu, your main thread for what people were watching for is gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's tougher to follow this because the audience has to keep up with, oh, well, I'm trying to get our people back to Mandalore, and I'm trying to rejoin the covert, and I'm trying to get myself baptized again so that I can be forgiven for breaking the creed, and I'm trying to protect Navarro from the pirates, and I'm trying to, there's so much, and I'm trying to, that I think that's it. There's no focus to this season until these last 2 episodes, and it's too late to have this type of focus.
Yeah, I mean, it is where it really comes into focus, right? And you know, in the sense of like we're bringing together the 3 seasons, you know. And I think another thing that happens there, I'm watching this with my wife, and you know, Din calls R5, and we're like, wait, was R5 just left on Mandalore?
Right.
Like, you know, and so that's another one of those places where it's the editing of the season. It's hard to remember that R5 just got left on Mandalore. He never made it off, or did he? And it's like, that's one of those things as well where it becomes a little bit, you know, frustrating with the way that the season has worked. And so, yeah, you know, I don't want this to, though, because like I feel like there's a lot of nitpicks that we're talking about with this episode, but they really don't have anything to do with the episode. There's so much more to do with the season itself.
Yeah, but they do have a bit to do with the episode because of the fact that this is better than the previous episode in terms of its apportionment of time, and its pay attention to this, the self-contained story elements. I think that there is a focus here in this episode. It's very clear what I'm trying to achieve and what I'm along for the ride for, because you've put everybody into extreme danger along with Grogu, and you have these, you know, you have all of these different fights going on. You have all of these different things. I think it's cut together very, very well. I'm going to skip ahead really quick. We can always come back to other stuff, but I'm going to skip ahead. And I have to ask, do you think the destruction of the Darksaber carried as much weight for people who never watched the animated series and were introduced to it in this series? Do you think the destruction of it carried the same weight that it did for somebody like us, who first got to know the Darksaber in the Clone Wars, and there's this end of a long journey of this thing? Do you think that impact landed as well for the casual fans?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it feels like to me, you know, having just rewatched season 2 with you and then being in season 3, I feel like the show has done a good job with building the lore of the Darksaber for the most part, and the desire then that we, you know, had learned about in the last episode with exactly what went down with this Night of 1,000 Tears, and this desire that Gideon has for the Darksaber, And I think it's accentuated here by learning these last 2 episodes that, his desire is to be force sensitive. So it would make sense not only why he would want a lightsaber, but he wants the lightsaber that represents the Mandalorian culture too. And I think all of that really works on its own terms, in the sense that I do feel that this show as a whole has done a good job of building its own mythology of this object, so that when it is destroyed, it is kind of like this moment of, oh my goodness, like this really important thing, is this going to then impact Bo-Katan and the Mandalorians that she's just been able to bring together finally? Is this going to create disunity and disharmony once again, once this is all over, And so I do think there's enough of that. I think, as we've mentioned too many times, if you had found a way to bring this season to us in a more cohesive way, I think it could have been even better. But I think that they do a decent job of building their own mythology for people who don't know it from, say, the Clone Wars. Like, you get the sense that this is incredibly important. Of course, it means so much more to us, of course, but I think they do a good job. What's your thought on that?
No, yeah, I mean, I think I think it's fine. I do. I mean, I think I sort of showed a little leg in the way I set up the question, where I think it didn't land as strongly as it should have, could have overall, but I think that it lands well enough, and that it lands well enough, especially in the context of the fact that we see that the way forward for the Mandalorians, you had mentioned when we were talking about the spies, there's maybe 1,000 left, and we find out that the Children of the Watch, we've now graduated into, in a very sneaky way, the Mandalorians that we read about in the expanded universe through the 90s of blood doesn't matter. Adoption is the way that they're going to go forward. And adoption, found family, is a huge continuing thread in Star Wars. So the Mandalorians have now found a way forward where they no longer need a darksaber, because they're not about a cultural unity sort of thing. It's about your culture changing and expanding and welcoming people in to build a stronger culture. At least that's the way I take it. My next question to you would actually be, do you think Gideon's really dead? Do you think that he's as dead as they need him to be, but if they decide to do a season 4, they could bring him back still? Or do you think this is it? This is the end of Gideon?
So, I mean, the moment that he dies in this fiery blast, he does not have his helmet on.
True.
So, I don't see how you survive that inferno.
Is
with
it a
your
disco
head
inferno?
Exposed. Yes, exactly. There was a lot of dancing happening in the background, and a lot of hip thrusts, and that's really what got him. Look, I think that he is dead, and I think that the beauty of the Shadow Collective in the previous episode is it allows us to understand that there are more of these guys out there, and it already set up that the main threat, the biggest threat to the galaxy, is the one we're not quite sure where he is, and that's Admiral Thrawn. And of course, Ahsoka is going to pick that up and run with it. And the goal, it sounds like, in some ways, at some point, is we're going to bring all these characters together to fight him, I think. And so, I think Gideon can be dead and should be dead at this point, and they should just allow that to be the case, because it also, it lets the show mature and grow in the way that I think, watching this was fascinating after watching Mando and Grogu, because I was really struck about the way in which Grogu feels so much older in The Mandalorian Grogu. If you've watched this episode, he feels so much more childish in this, just even with the vocalizations, and even if his kind of like actions and everything about him feels slightly more childish, right? But you watch this and then you watch Mandalorian Grogu and you're like, man, that character just feels like it really has progressed. He has grown. He has matured. And I really liked that. And so for me, I think he should be dead. And so do you feel the same, or you're like, they'll bring him back if they want?
No, I think Gideon's played out. Gideon's done. There's nowhere to go with a Gideon character at this point. They've we didn't think he was dead at the end of season 1. He immediately comes back.
I'm not quite dead.
Right. And like this has all been, or season 2, like this is all building toward, the character is dead. He's done. He's finished. We've ridden this plot line as far as we can. I think the only way forward, if you're going to bring the Imperials into it, which I kind of hope they don't, because I think Mandalorian and Grogu has proven that you don't need the Imperials to be the bad guys anymore. But if they were to choose the Imperials, and this is all going to depend on, Ahsoka season 2, but if they were to choose the Imperials, I think you have a very fascinating Brendel Hux connection to pursue.
Yep.
Or Pelayan, if you want to tie it in to Thrawn.
Yeah, absolutely.
One or both of them, because they definitely appear in the collective to be getting along with each other pretty well. And I think that that could be interesting, but it would have to be very careful to very clearly point us in the direction of lore building without alienating the casual fans who are getting picked up by the Mandalorian and Grogu.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think one of the things as well that, we connect with the sequel trilogy, of course, is the Praetorian Guard. And man, did they
love the armor? I love that armor.
So cool.
It's so very good. The Praetorian
and their
Praetorian
fight
Guard
sequence with Mando was great. I thought it was really well done. And so it's one of those things where I appreciate so much when we can work to bring the Star Wars saga together and make it feel more cohesive, and I appreciate that when possible, they do that with this show. And I think that they do a really great job of it. And what did you think about the end of the episode where, Grogu gets adopted and the Great Forge is reignited, and then, Mando goes and gets himself a new job?
I like the fact that Mando gets a new job. The show is declaring that we've played this out. We're moving on now. I appreciate that. It is very much an end of 3-season arc. It's not an end of this season arc. It's an end of 3-season arc. And I'm happy with that. We have given the Mandalorians as happy an ending as we can. And I honestly think that ending with Mando sitting on the porch with his kid in the front yard playing is beautiful, because again, it's the found family thing. It's Mando is retired. My one question to you would be, with all of the culmination of how big a deal it is to go back to Mandalore, and he identifies as a Mandalorian and everything is the Mandalorian, does it feel organic enough for you that he then decides to leave Mandalore and do something else?
Yeah, I thought that they actually did a really good job with that, because, the armorer tells him, this is your son, he's your apprentice, and the same thing that happened for you needs to happen for him.
Yeah.
He needs to be taken on adventures so he can learn to do the job. And I thought it was great. I really did. And what was beautiful about it is that I think that it sets up what they actually do in the film perfectly, because the very thing that the armorer said to Din about what Grogu needs is what they do in that movie. That whole movie then becomes about Grogu being on an adventure that helps him grow and begin to take more responsibility of what it truly means to be in this life that his dad has chosen and that he has chosen as well.
I'm glad you point toward that because you mentioned it earlier in the discussion, and I think you're absolutely right, where you can see growth through this season very clearly, and I think you then see the leap into Mandalorian and Grogu, even in the very first adventure. The young Grogu that we're used to wouldn't have hidden in the beginning. He wouldn't have been reliable enough to jump out and stop the mouse droid. He would have done things a bit differently. And then through the course of that film, I think this ending point for Grogu points toward, like you're saying, where he is in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. And I think that my one question for you to wrap up our discussion of season 3 is, do you come out of this? And now, of course, we have the context of the movie. Do you want a season 4? Or do you want them instead to remain focused on telling stories by little leaps with more movies instead of seasons?
I don't think I can answer that question until I see what they're going to do with Ahsoka season 2. Because I think that is going to lay the groundwork for a lot of where Dave wants to go. And my guess is that it will also be answered as question at Celebration next year, when they most likely announce the things that they're going to be doing with all of these characters that we've been seeing, all the animation stuff that might be coming, so I don't know. I would not mind seeing another season. I also wouldn't mind seeing another film. What I want them to do personally is I want them to choose what works best for the stories that they want to tell. If that's in a movie, do it. If that's in a season, do it. I'm okay with either. But I do think that we need to make sure, and I think Dave's well aware of this, and the rest of his team is well aware of this. We do need there to be Star Wars movies in the theater every 2-3 years, right? And just one. We don't need many. We just, one movie every 2 or 3 years.
Don't burn me out like
great.
Marvel. Please don't burn me
exactly.
out like Marvel.
And if you do that, I think that's fantastic. So that's my feeling on it. I'm not beholden to one or the other. I'm just beholden to what's best for the overall structure of Star Wars moving forward. And I'm very much in the camp of, yes, we have to make sure that Star Wars has a great presence on the big screen. And if that is best helped then by Mando and Grogu having more adventures on the big screen, great, do it. If something else is that, do that,
I think that the final point for me in context of that is that whatever they choose, that is going to be the fate of the stories going forward. I don't think that you can successfully leap to the big screen, step back to a show, and then go back to the big screen again. I think they shot their shot. It went well enough. And now, if they choose movies only going forward, that's what they got to do. If they choose to go back to streaming, I think they're making a declaration that they're coming back to streaming and staying there, because I don't think that it would work to flip-flop between the two, because you will have a substantial portion of the audience to say, I'm watching it on stream. I'm just waiting for it to be released on streaming, and you won't get the movie theater thing going for you. But what you can get, if you don't want to wait for next year's celebration to talk to Matt about all of these great things with The Mandalorian, We're going to point where you can talk to him now. After, Matt, you give your rating for this episode and the full season.
I'm going to give this episode a 4 as well. I really enjoy it. I think it brings together the season and just the series well. We didn't talk about this, but I think the effects work in this episode is really good. They did a great job. You did not have some of the issues we were talking about with the volume really in this episode, and I think mainly that's because they were in confined sets, and it was great. I loved it. So yeah, this is a 4 for me, and really happy with that. The entire season as a whole, I think I have to give it a 3 out of 5. And that's just because there is strength in the strongest episodes, but it truly is hampered by a season that just is not functionally put together in a way that is as cohesive and riveting as it could have been if it had been worked together better. You know, if we had just done the job of pulling together the story and putting together the story in a way that weaved all the storylines so that you were hopping from story to story in a way that felt like you're climbing up a ladder, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like, it's like I went into a split level house and I went up and then I had to go down and then I had to go back up again and then I had to go sideways, you know, and it's just like, yeah, it's a bad example. Anyway, that's what I got. What about you, John? What are your ratings?
I like your example because it sounds like that house that supposedly is like all haunted with like doors to nowhere and stuff like that, which I think you have stumbled on an apropos comparison for the season. For this episode, it is a solid 4. Very solid 4. Really enjoyed this episode, and I think it's because it's so focused and it's action packed. And I agree with you, the effects work is really good here, really, really good. I think that the season as a whole, I'm going to actually wind up being more forgiving. Okay, it happens every so often where I'm a little more forgiving than Matt. It's very rare, but it happens. But I'm going to come down. It's a tiny bit more forgiving, 3.5. Because I'm always very forgiving when you can stick the landing. And while this is not like a perfect dismount, considering how I expected the season to end from what came before, to land it this well, I'm significantly impressed that I still got 2 episodes where I said, you know, I had a heck of a good time watching those.
Yeah. That's a great point.
So this season gets a 3.5 on the strength of just a strong landing when the rest of it was so uneven. So as we teased, people are undoubtedly going to want to talk to you online about your reaction to The Mandalorian Season 3. Matt, where can they reach out to you and find you online?
Absolutely. And thank you I've had lots of people there were some things that I was tweeting about, some frustrations with what we talked about in our review with just the industry in general and that kind of stuff. And I had some really good interactions with some people about just seeing that other people are frustrated with this stuff as well. So thank you for the interactions. It was really nice to see, so social media doesn't have to be a cesspool. So check me out on social media and the name Matt Rushing02. If I'm on that platform, that's where you'll find me under that name. Of course, I even inspired a blog post by a good friend of mine, so maybe you'll find that and read that. You can also find me over on the Nerd Party Network here with Owlpost, talking about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series. Over on the TFM Network with crossovers we do with the 602 Club. You'll find me there, talking about all of these franchises we love, plus a lot of great Star Trek talk with my good friend Chris Jones. So please check all of that out. But John, I know that people are going to want to check out the Kessel Junkie blog, which has just come back out of retirement with, I would say, some absolute bangers. So where can people find you?
Careful now, because the Castle Junkie blog is run for free and from the benefit of spare time. And it's just been a blessing that I've been able to fire off a couple of posts without losing too much sleep. But yeah, thank you, Matt, for the shout out. I appreciate that. And of course, you can find me as Castle Junkie on your social network of choice. Letterboxd and Goodreads are my favorites because I love talking about movies and books. And you can find me here on the network co-hosting House Lights with Tristan Riddell and Darren Moser, where we talk about movies of all things, but we have a really good time doing it. And we have some very spirited conversations because alternatingly, I find out that Tristan is dead inside and Darren doesn't agree with me. And both of those are very bad things. So, I'm going to keep trying to rehab them. But Matt, before I go back to trying to rehab them, I need to go and try to market these stuffed animal versions of us that we're going to start trying to sell on a galactic scale. And so I think it's time to close these negotiations.
Well, John, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.